The hum of the Manhattan skyline was a familiar symphony outside my 30th floor office at Advantage Global. Below, the city throbbed with a relentless energy, mirroring the pulse that still quickened in my veins. My name is Vivian Vance, and I was, until recently, the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at one of New York City's leading advertising agencies. Nearing my 60th birthday, most people expected me to be slowing down, perhaps contemplating a quiet retirement in Florida with a knitting club. Those people didn't know Vivian Vance. For 2 decades, I had poured my heart and soul into Advantage Global. I had joined as a fresh-faced, albeit mature for my years, account executive, meticulously climbing the corporate ladder. I wasn't a flashy presenter or a boardroom showman. My strength lay in my meticulous preparation, my ability to dissect market trends like a surgeon, and my unwavering commitment to my clients. I built relationships not on schmoozing, but on trust, on delivering results, on understanding their unspoken needs even before they did. My rise through the ranks was a testament to unparalleled commitment and an almost obsessive dedication to excellence. Just last quarter, I had cemented my legacy, even to myself. It was the billion-dollar deal with InnovateX, a major Silicon Valley tech client, a deal that every other agency in the city had chased, a deal that my younger, flashier colleagues had scoffed at my chances of winning. "Vivian, you're too old school for them," they'd whispered in the break room. "They want disruptive, agile, millennial energy." I just smiled. I knew InnovateX's CEO, Mark Jensen, from his early startup days. I knew he valued substance over flash, results over buzzwords. So, while the young guns were crafting viral campaigns and slick presentations, I was studying InnovateX's 5-year projections, analyzing their competitors' weaknesses, and identifying the precise pain points in their market expansion strategy. My proposal wasn't flashy. It was a masterclass in strategic foresight, presented with quiet confidence in a boardroom where I was often the oldest person by 2 decades. When Jensen signed the contract, a thick stack of papers that smelled of fresh ink and endless possibilities, it wasn't just a win, it was a vindication. That single deal secured the agency's financial future for years, injecting a much-needed lifeline into Advantage Global during a tough economic climate. Marcus Thorne, our CEO, had even shaken my hand with genuine warmth, a rare display from the man who usually reserved his enthusiasm for quarterly earnings reports. "Vivian," he'd said, his voice unusually soft, "you're a legend." Despite my age, I felt invigorated, my mind as keen as ever. The InnovateX deal had proven that experience wasn't a burden. It was an asset. I was looking forward to the next challenge, to mentoring the younger talent, to perhaps transitioning into a more strategic advisory role as I neared a dignified retirement. A consultancy role, maybe, where I could pick my projects and still contribute without the daily grind. That was my vision. My well-earned twilight years, filled with intellectual stimulation and the quiet satisfaction of a career well spent. But fate, and a ruthless CEO, had other plans. The summons came on a crisp Monday morning, delivered by Thorne's impeccably dressed assistant, a woman who always looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Mr. Thorne would like to see you in his office, Ms. Vance, immediately." There was no hint of urgency in her tone, but a subtle tremor in her voice, a flicker in her eyes, suggested something was amiss. I brushed it off. Perhaps a new project, a congratulatory bonus, or even an early discussion about my future transition. I walked down the polished hallway, past open-plan cubicles where young creatives hunched over glowing screens, their energy almost palpable. I nodded to a few familiar faces, some of whom offered nervous, knowing smiles that I didn't quite understand. I pressed the discreet button to Thorne's private office, a space of glass and steel that overlooked Central Park, a true power perch. He was waiting, seated behind his vast, minimalist desk, bathed in the morning light. Marcus Thorne was a man who cultivated an image of ruthless efficiency, sharp suits, sharper jawline, eyes that seemed to constantly calculate. He was younger than me by 20 years, having inherited the CEO position after his father retired. He gestured to the leather chair opposite him, not rising. A bad sign. He always stood for important meetings. Vivian, he began, his voice coolly dismissive, devoid of the warmth he'd shown after the InnovateX deal. Thank you for coming. I've called you here today to discuss some strategic restructuring. My stomach tightened. Strategic restructuring, corporate speak for unpleasant changes. But what could it be? I had just closed $1 billion deal. I was untouchable, surely. As you know, he continued, leaning back, his gaze unwavering, Advantage Global is always looking forward. We need to be agile, responsive, future-proof. The market is increasingly demanding youthful energy, fresh perspectives, and a dynamic approach to leadership. I felt a cold dread begin to creep up my spine. His words were precise, almost rehearsed. And to that end, he said, taking a deliberate pause that felt designed to maximize impact, we've decided to make some changes to our executive leadership team. Effective immediately, your position as Vice President of Strategic Partnerships will be reallocated. My breath caught in my throat. Reallocated? After 20 years? After InnovateX? Reallocated to whom, Marcus? I managed, my voice steady despite the tremor beginning in my hands. To Ashley Reynolds, he stated, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. She's a brilliant young mind, fresh out of Wharton, with an incredible grasp of digital trends. She brings the new energy we believe is essential for our future. Ashley Reynolds, a fresh-faced MBA graduate, barely out of business school, with no actual industry experience beyond theoretical case studies. I knew her name. She was Thorne's latest protege, whispered to be more connected than competent. My mind flashed to the hours I'd spent poring over contracts, building trust, closing the kind of deals she probably couldn't even spell. And what about me, Marcus? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. What is my reallocation? He leaned forward, a feigned expression of regret on his face. Vivian, your contributions to Advantage are undeniable. Your legacy is etched into this company's history, and we value loyalty, of course. So, we've created a new role for you, a vital, crucial role, really, for the smooth operation of our entire facility. He paused again, letting the words hang in the air, a cruel, drawn-out moment of suspense. We're transitioning you to Head of Facilities Management, he announced, his voice flat. Essentially, you'll be overseeing the building's maintenance, logistics, and, of course, the cleaning department. It's an executive-level title, of course, he added, as if that made the humiliation palatable. But it's a critical operational role, freeing up our executive team for the strategic vision. I sat there, utterly aghast. Head of Facilities Management, in charge of the cleaning department, my vice president title, my corner office with a panoramic view, my prestigious client portfolio, all gone, to be handed to a greenhorn. It was a thinly veiled demotion, a brutal act of ageism, designed to push me out, to make me quit without the mess of a wrongful termination suit. Marcus, I said, my voice rising, my carefully maintained composure finally cracking. I just closed $1 billion deal, a deal that saved this agency. I have made no errors, no mistakes. My performance reviews have been exemplary. You yourself called me a legend. His gaze hardened. Vivian, with all due respect, Your past successes are precisely that. In the past, we're looking to the future. We need someone who truly understands the evolving landscape, who brings fresh ideas, not simply relies on a proven track record. It's about synergy, about agility. We need new energy. The phrases dripped from his lips like poison, coating the bitter pill he was forcing me to swallow. This is age discrimination, Marcus, I stated, my voice shaking with a cold fury. You're replacing me with someone unqualified simply because she's younger. After 2 decades of dedication, after bringing in the biggest deal in this company's history, you're sidelining me to the cleaning crew? His face went utterly blank, devoid of any sympathy. Vivian, you're emotional. This is a business decision. We're offering you a lateral move, albeit to a different division. It's an opportunity for you to diversify your skill set, to experience a different side of the business. His words were a bland corporate insult. I knew then that fighting was useless. His mind was made up, probably long before I even stepped into his office. The thinly veiled ageism wasn't just thinly veiled, it was a bludgeon. He wasn't looking for a graceful exit for me. He wanted me to crawl away in shame. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a cold, calculating man who valued youth and superficiality over proven competence and loyalty. The Advantage Global I had helped build, the company that had once prided itself on its meritocratic culture, was gone. It had been replaced by a soulless entity driven by the whims of a ruthless CEO. A sudden clarity washed over me, cutting through the initial shock and humiliation. No, I said, my voice firming, a new resolve hardening in my eyes. No, I don't think I will diversify my skill set, Marcus. I think I will simply diversify my employer. I rose from the chair, my posture as straight as ever, my dignity intact even as my world crumbled. Consider this my resignation, effective immediately, I stated, my voice ringing with a newfound conviction. I didn't wait for his response. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving him to his future-proofing and his new energy. The walk back to my office felt different. The hushed whispers of my colleagues were clearer now, their pitying glances sharper. I ignored them all. I went to my meticulously organized desk, opened my top drawer, and pulled out my personal effects, my family photos, my favorite pen, a small polished stone I kept for good luck. I left everything else, the awards, the plaques, the framed photos of successful campaigns. They were no longer mine, nor did I want them. As I walked out of Advantage Global for the last time, the revolving glass doors reflecting the harsh midday sun, I didn't feel defeated. I felt a surge of something raw and powerful. They thought they had broken me. They thought they had put me out to pasture. They were wrong. They had just set me free, and the game, I realized, was far from over. It had just moved to a different, much more interesting playing field. The harsh fluorescent lights of the HR office seemed to mock the vibrant city outside as I signed the papers. My resignation, effective immediately. Humiliated, I submitted it on the spot, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I walked out of Advantage Global that day, the agency I had helped build for 2 decades, a ghost of my former self. The security guard, a kind man named Frank, who always brought me a coffee in the mornings, offered a sympathetic nod. He knew, everyone knew. The whispers had already begun, amplified by Thorne's thinly veiled dismissals in internal memos about necessary changes for the future. The initial days were a blur of disorientation and despair. My impeccably organized Manhattan apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded prison. I, Vivian, a woman who had defined herself by her work, felt utterly adrift. My daily rhythm, which had revolved around strategic meetings, client calls, and the electric buzz of a creative agency, was gone. The silence was deafening. I found myself wandering aimlessly, staring at my reflection in the polished glass of my awards cabinet, a collection of industry accolades that now seemed to mock me with their useless shine. What was I without Advantage Global? Who was Vivian Vance if not the sharp VP of Strategic Partnerships? The public humiliation stung deeper than I'd anticipated. Colleagues, many of whom I had mentored, suddenly became scarce. Phone calls went unanswered, invitations dried up. The corporate world was a shark tank, and I had been publicly, spectacularly, thrown overboard. The whispers turned to outright pity, which was almost worse than contempt. Poor Vivian, I imagined them saying, too old for the game. It was during this dark period that my children, Sarah and Michael, became my anchors. Sarah, my eldest, a brilliant lawyer in her early 30s, was incandescent with fury. Michael, my youngest, a tech entrepreneur who had built his own successful startup, was equally outraged. They arrived at my apartment like a protective phalanx, armed with takeout, coffee, and an unshakable belief in me. Mom, what he did was despicable. Sarah fumed, pacing my living room, her voice sharp with indignation. It's blatant age discrimination. We should sue him. We could ruin him. Absolutely, Michael agreed, his jaw tight. He threw away decades of invaluable experience for some flavor of the month MBA. It's insane, and it's typical of how Silicon Valley sees anyone over 40. I just shook my head. My shoulders slumped. It's not that simple, darlings. They'll bury us in legal fees, and the industry is small. Who would hire me now? A 60-year-old head of facilities management. The words tasted bitter. Mom, you're not done. You're brilliant, they urged, their voices unwavering, a chorus of unwavering support that slowly began to chip away at my despair. You just landed Advantage their biggest deal ever. You have a network that spans the globe. You understand brand strategy better than anyone half your age, or even a quarter of your age for that matter. They spent hours with me, brainstorming, pushing, refusing to let me wallow. They reminded me of my triumphs, of the obstacles I'd overcome throughout my career. They forced me to articulate my strengths, my unique value proposition. Their unwavering encouragement ignited a spark, a tiny ember in the cold ashes of my despair. I began to realize they were right. My decades of experience, my vast network of contacts built on trust and results, and my deep understanding of client needs were, in fact, invaluable. Thorne had seen them as liabilities, as antiquated, but they were my superpowers. The market was changing, yes, but the fundamentals of building a strong brand, of understanding human psychology, of forging lasting partnerships, those were timeless, and I possessed them in spades. The idea came to me late one night, a sudden flash of inspiration that hit with the force of a revelation. Why try to fit back into a system that had discarded me? Why not create my own? I decided to launch Legacy Innovations. It wouldn't be another sprawling, soulless agency. No, it would be a boutique consulting firm, specializing in brand strategy, operating lean and mean, focused entirely on delivering superior results. And here was the twist. I would only hire experienced professionals aged 50 and over, women and men who, like me, had been discarded by a youth-obsessed corporate world. I envisioned a team of seasoned veterans, ex-CEOs, former CMOs, top-tier creatives, and strategists, all with decades of real-world experience, all hungry for a new challenge, and all tired of being told they were past their prime. My firm would be a refuge, a sanctuary, and a powerhouse. My pitch was simple, direct, and utterly compelling. Proven wisdom delivers superior results. I would market legacy innovations not just on talent, but on the profound, unshakable value of hard earned experience. We would offer a level of insight and strategic foresight that no fresh faced MBA, no matter how brilliant, could ever hope to replicate. We would be the antidote to the fleeting trends, the buzzword laden campaigns, and the superficiality that plagued so much of the modern advertising world. The idea felt audacious, rebellious, and terrifying, but it also felt undeniably right. The despair that had gripped me for weeks began to recede, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just about starting a new business. It was about reclaiming my identity, about proving Marcus Thorne and every other ageist executive like him spectacularly wrong. The fight was far from over. In fact, it had just truly begun. The initial capital for legacy innovations came from my personal savings, supplemented by a significant, albeit reluctant, investment from Michael. "Mom, this is crazy. A startup at 60?" He'd muttered, but the look in my eyes must have convinced him. My reputation in the industry was indeed my greatest asset, ensuring immediate credibility. The old guard, the clients who had worked with me for years and respected my no-nonsense approach, were the first to call. They were tired, too, of the youthful bluster and shallow trend chasing that was becoming endemic in the industry. They wanted results, and they remembered who delivered them. My first hire was Arthur Sterling, a former CFO of a Fortune 500 company, pushed out at 62 for failing to adapt to digital transformation. He was a whiz with numbers and had a cynical wit that matched my own. Then came Eleanor Vance, no relation, a creative director whose campaigns had won countless awards before her agency decided she was too traditional at 55. My team quickly grew into a remarkable ensemble of seasoned experts, each bringing a lifetime of accumulated knowledge and a fierce desire to prove their worth. We called ourselves the Silverbacks, wise, powerful, and not to be underestimated. Legacy innovations took off with astonishing speed. Our first major win was a struggling luxury brand, disillusioned with its current youthful agency that churned out flashy but ultimately ineffective social media campaigns. We delved deep, reviving their classic brand identity with a modern twist, focusing on timeless elegance and substance. The campaign was a resounding success, boosting their sales by 30% in 6 months. News traveled fast. Word of our experienced talent-only model spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was a promise. Clients saw that our pitches were grounded in decades of market realities. Our strategies built on a profound understanding of consumer behavior, and our execution flawless due to sheer experience. We didn't chase every shiny new trend. We understood which trends mattered and how to leverage them effectively. Our lean, efficient structure meant lower overheads and, consequently, more competitive pricing. We were nimble, decisive, and free from the internal politics and bloated bureaucracy that plagued larger agencies. We secured major clients quickly, from established retail giants looking to reconnect with their mature demographic, to innovative tech companies who needed seasoned guidance on navigating complex regulatory landscapes. I even landed a deal with a massive pharmaceutical company, a sector notorious for its conservative approach to advertising, simply because my team had collective experience navigating its intricate legal and ethical minefields. The competition was fierce, especially from Advantage Global. Thorne and his dynamic young team initially scoffed at us. "Vivian's retirement home for consultants," I heard him sneer in an industry podcast. But soon, their snickering turned to panic. We started outmaneuvering Advantage Global on several key bids. Our wins weren't just lucky breaks, they were strategic victories. We knew their weaknesses, their over-reliance on flashy, unproven talent, their internal power struggles, their inability to truly understand the long-term vision of clients. One particularly satisfying victory came when we poached the national campaign for Apex Motors, a car manufacturer Advantage had held for over a decade. I knew Apex's CEO, David Chin, intimately from our previous collaborations. Thorne had alienated him with a series of tone-deaf, youth-focused pitches that missed Apex's core demographic. My team crafted a campaign that celebrated craftsmanship, legacy, and enduring quality. It resonated powerfully. The day Chen called me to say he was moving his account to Legacy, I felt a deep, profound satisfaction that no multi-million-dollar bonus could ever buy. The scale of our success was almost unbelievable, even to me. We opened offices in London, then Singapore, then Silicon Valley itself. My silverbacks were proving to be gold. They were passionate, dedicated, and fiercely loyal. They knew this was their last chance, and they seized it with both hands. We weren't just building a company, we were building a movement. As my 70th birthday approached, the celebrations weren't quiet affairs with family. They were global events. Industry magazines hailed me as a titan of industry, a disruptor in chief, an inspiration. I was invited to speak at major conferences, sharing my story of resilience and late-life entrepreneurship. The headlines were almost dizzying. Vivian Vance, from demotion to dynasty. The billion-dollar comeback. Indeed, I was not just successful, I was a billionaire. Legacy Innovations, fueled by its unparalleled collective wisdom and a lean, efficient structure, had expanded globally, its company size and revenue far surpassing Advantage Global's. Thorne's agency, once a market leader, was now struggling, a pale shadow of its former self. I occasionally saw reports on Thorne, at Advantage. He found himself struggling to retain clients and talent, constantly battling the shadow of the company he had cast aside. His new energy hires were leaving for flashier, less stable startups. His dynamic approach was seen as chaotic and inexperienced. He tried to mimic Legacy's strategy, even attempting to hire a few older executives, but he lacked the core understanding, the genuine respect for experience that was our very foundation. He couldn't replicate the culture of trust and shared purpose that I had meticulously cultivated. The media lauded me as an entrepreneurial icon, a testament to late life achievement. They spoke of my vision, my courage, my defiance. But as I stood on stage, accepting yet another Lifetime Achievement Award, a quiet smile played on my lips. They celebrated my rise, but I knew the true catalyst. It wasn't just my ambition. It was his arrogance. It was the sting of humiliation that had ignited the fiercest fire within me. He thought he was putting me out of the game. He had simply given me a brand new one to win, and I had won it spectacularly. The glittering lights of the Waldorf Astoria ballroom shimmered around me, reflecting off the crystal chandeliers and the celebratory champagne flutes. It was the night of Legacy Innovations' IPO, a culmination of over a decade of relentless effort, audacious risks, and unwavering belief in myself and my team. My children, Sarah and Michael, stood by my side, their faces beaming with pride, their initial skepticism long replaced by profound admiration. Arthur, Eleanor, and the rest of my silverbacks, now grizzled titans in their own right, raised their glasses, their eyes holding a shared history of rejection and resurgence. The ticker on the giant screen behind me flashed, LGINV, IPO price $50, closing at $75. We had surpassed all expectations, solidifying our place not just as a successful company, but as a paradigm shift. The murmurs of Vivian Vance, the comeback queen, had been replaced by Vivian Vance, the visionary. As I accepted the microphone, the roar of applause was almost deafening. I looked out at the sea of faces. investors, clients, journalists, and a few familiar faces from my past at Advantage Global, now looking considerably less confident. I saw Marcus Thorne, relegated to a distant table, his face a mask of bitter resentment. He had aged considerably, the once sharp lines of his face etched with worry, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy that pulsed through my team. His empire was crumbling, and mine was soaring. The poetic justice of it was almost too sweet to bear. But the real triumph wasn't about him or about Advantage Global. It was about us, about every man and woman over 50 who had been told their best days were behind them. It was about proving that true value isn't tied to age or fleeting trends, but to unwavering talent and relentless spirit. Standing there, bathed in the glow of my success, I reflected on my journey. I remembered that desolate feeling in the HR office, the cold dread as Marcus Thorne dismantled my life. I recalled the initial days filled with despair, the sting of humiliation that had felt like a death knell to my career, and then the rallying cries of my children, those fierce, loving voices that refused to let me quit. I knew deep down that without the crushing humiliation and the forced departure from Advantage Global over a decade ago, I would never have summoned the courage or the fierce motivation to embark on this audacious path. That strategic restructuring wasn't a demotion, it was a detonation. It blew up my comfortable, predictable life, forcing me to build something entirely new, something fundamentally better. The setback was, in fact, my greatest catalyst. It ignited a fire I never knew I possessed, pushed me beyond limits I thought were fixed, and showed me a strength I didn't realize I had. I had transformed adversity into empire. Legacy Innovations wasn't just a business, it was a philosophy, a statement to the world. We proved that experience is not a burden to be shed, but a treasure to be leveraged. That wisdom gained over decades is more valuable than youthful exuberance, especially when tackling complex real-world problems. We were the living embodiment of our pitch. Proven wisdom delivers superior results. My story became a beacon for others, a powerful reminder that experience is an asset, not a liability, and sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift of all, unleashing a power you never knew you had. It was a lesson hard won, but invaluable. The corporate world, with its obsession with youth and fleeting trends, had tried to bury me. Instead, it had planted a seed, and I had grown into a forest. I ended my speech with a simple truth. Never let anyone tell you that your best days are behind you. Sometimes they're just waiting for you to discover them. The applause that followed was not just for Legacy Innovations' financial triumph, but for the human spirit's indomitable will. The story of Vivian Vance, the woman who was too old to lead but too wise to quit, now reaches its conclusion. Her journey is a powerful testament to resilience, integrity, and the enduring power of experience. If Vivian's defiance and triumph resonated with you, if her journey inspired you, please consider giving this story a like. Your support helps us share narratives that explore courage, reinvention, and the true meaning of success. For more captivating stories of overcoming adversity and challenging the status quo, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We genuinely invite you to comment below with your thoughts on Vivian's choices, your own experiences with being underestimated, or any insights this tale may have sparked within you. We truly value your feedback and appreciate every single comment. Thank you for joining us on Vivian's extraordinary rebirth. We look forward to connecting with you again.